Very cool.
That's great. Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here.
Tore here.
It's been a long time, my friend.
It's been way too long.
It's so lovely to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Both of you, actually.
So we were talking about this earlier. For those of you who don't know, Tore from UA, from Universal Audio. We first met Tore, must be almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Wow.
in a previous life with TC Electronic. And how long have you been with UA now?
Just over 5 years, actually.
Wow.
And I think that's when we last saw you
Yeah.
here,
Just after.
pre-crazy
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
You're looking well, man.
I'm really good. You guys too.
Apart from the broken finger.
Yes, there is that. It's really nice timing, right? It's like, oh, you should come over here, and then, like, literally a couple of days later, I break my finger.
And the broken wrist.
The wrist just healed. Like,
Okay.
I had the cast off for 2 weeks, and now I'm back for 5 weeks of this, then 2 weeks off everything, and now 4 weeks of this thing. But such is life.
Well, it's great to welcome you back, man. Please subscribe, click the button. It helps. It's free. Please do that. It really helps. Do we have you to thank then for UA's guitar pedal line?
Among many other much more talented people than me, yes. But I played a little part in this, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came in, and at that time the aux was already there.
Yeah.
So that's my really good colleague James Santiago,
Yes.
who's an oracle of guitar knowledge,
He's a wicked guitar player.
and that too. And he has a collection of vintage gear that would put most people to shame. But apart from that, we really didn't have anything. So all the pedals that have come out in the last couple of years have been me and James and the engineering team and everybody, marketing, everybody sort of all chiming together to make that happen. And it's been a lot of fun.
And just as a bit of kind of history, the first pedals we saw from UA were the
Golden.
the Starlight,
Astra.
Astra,
yes.
modulation,
Yeah,
reverb, and delay.
Yeah.
Then followed the Delverb.
No, actually, then
amps
the
came next.
amps came next. So then we had Ruby, which we have on here now.
Yeah.
Woodrow, and the last one, which we don't have on here right now, is Dream. So basically, Tweed Deluxe, AC30, and Deluxe Reverb
Okay.
pedals, dedicated amp pedals.
And then it seemed like things got a bit simpler because then came the Delverb,
Yeah.
the Galaxy, which we have, and then the single
single
size
Yeah,
stomps, which
yeah.
you've seen featured on CPS.
Yeah.
So quite the journey, and I guess we can be expecting more stuff.
That's not unlikely. I think I would have a very hard job if I didn't come up with some new stuff at some point in the future.
Very good.
Yeah, you get the sack, right? That's how that would work.
Yeah.
So Dan and I have a little bit of redress to look at. One of the things we want to do today is get into some of the amp pedals, because I think it's fair to say on TPS, Dan and I are not massive fans of digital amp simulation and amp modeling.
We're in a unique situation.
No excuses.
Yeah, no excuses. But we've got the real things,
Yeah.
and we get to turn them up loud
Yeah.
and have all that interaction. And I mean, this may be the loudest you've heard these amp simulations like ever.
I bet they're not.
Well, maybe not.
No, but 99% of the time I hear them way quieter than
Yeah,
this, and it was
yeah,
actually really nice with you playing right now, just cranking it up and really sort of hearing them come to life like
Yeah.
that, because it is a different experience for sure.
And we will get into that in a second. You can hear some stuff. It's fair to say we gave the Ruby fairly short shrift when we featured it. So with someone who really understands how to drive it today, we're gonna have another listen. The turning point for me was hearing Jack Griffiths
Lion.
when he came in and he had the Lion on his pedal board, and we recorded it direct, and it was like, okay, this feels like a little bit of a new day.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to hear all of those. We're going to hear the Galaxy a bit. We're going to talk about direction. We're going to talk about MIDI.
Yes. Everybody loves to talk about MIDI, right?
Or indeed the lack of MIDI. And just sort of have at it with someone here who knows how to drive these things. To explain the rig, we've got a Mesa 5050 power amp. And to all of those of you who said, you idiots, when you've got the Ruby, you need to plug it into a power amp and speakers.
Yes.
The idiots have listened.
Yeah, we'll do that. Also, we may get to some direct sounds as well, which will include a bit of jimmying. Can we start with the Woodrow?
Yeah.
Because this is the one pedal we haven't actually heard.
Yeah.
So this is modeled on Tweed Deluxe?
Yeah, that's a Tweed Deluxe. So again, as I said before, James and UA in general have a massive collection of old vintage gear. We pride ourselves on finding really nice examples and really modeling them. So this is a very specific Tweed Deluxe from 55.
Okay.
Which
One amp.
One amp, which
Yep.
been used on nameless albums in the LA area because
Okay.
it's
Okay.
bought used from a very I can't say who,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
very famous studio musician from
Okay.
from
Please, I have a
LA.
question.
Yes.
Is the algorithm in this the same as the algorithm when you're using UA plugins and there's a Tweed Deluxe thing? Is it the same thing or is it different?
It is the same thing to begin with.
Okay.
Because that plugin was done before we did the pedal.
Right.
So the idea was basically to take that plugin and put it in a pedal.
Right.
But then James and I got sort of carried away. What if we did this? What if we did that?
Okay.
What if we added a boost in front of it? What if we added some more cap models? What if we tweaked some things that we weren't, So
Right.
the idea is always to make it as easy as possible, and still have a good sound, obviously. But, at the end of the day, we always end up making it really hard for ourselves, but in the good quest for tone.
Okay.
So it is sort of the same, but there's definitely some differences. If you just do a straight up comparison between the two, they will not sound exactly the same.
Right.
And just for the record, you're not hearing any speaker simulation at the moment, obviously because we have some speakers. But if we do some direct sounds, you will hear some speaker simulation as we go on.
Yeah. Well, let's hear this one. So this is the guitar straight through into the power amp, right? No preamp, and it's a beautiful, inspiring sound. Feel a bit ill.
That person out there who says that's my favourite guitar tone ever on the show, thank you.
There you go.
It's a very cheap way of getting a sound. Just
Yeah, so you do need a preamp, right? And normally, just to explain this, in your regular guitar amp, that would be the bit where you plug in and you've got all the controls before the master volume. Sometimes Dan and I use valve preamps going into this, but here Woodrow is doing the job.
yeah.
Okay,
Come on
so
then.
there we go.
So it's definitely got that crunchy
Yeah, that sort of top end.
thing,
yeah.
you think?
Yeah.
Quick question. So you've got the mic channel as well.
Yeah.
Do you have to switch to anything to do that? Or
No,
is it
so
always
the
active?
way we designed it is that we have the two channels, and instead of having to switch between them, what you can do is if you only want to use one of the channels, just turn the other channel all the way off.
Yep.
That's essentially the same as just plugging into either the mic or instrument channel.
Right.
For some people who have more modern versions of a Tweed, bright is the same as the instrument channel.
Right.
Normal is the same as the mic channel. So, just so people can sort of compare. So you can turn one all the way off. That's essentially the same as plugging into the other channel. If you turn both of them on at the same time, it's the same as using a Y cable and then blending the two channels.
Because am I right in saying the mic is more gainy?
It's a little more gainy and it's a little bit more, it's a little less bright. It has a little less sort of sparkle on the top end.
Okay, Gagne, Daniel.
Have a go, man. There's
Do me a slap back, can you?
Yep. There's a really fun.
Hell yeah.
That sounds great.
It's that was a vintage treble riff, by the way. Nalik Holt, who's
Oh yeah, man. He's
actually he's a
Swedish.
fellow Scandinavian.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Yes.
Plays in a band called Vintage Treble. Very famous user of Les Pauls and Tweed Deluxes.
It's a good sound.
yeah.
It is. I like the mix of the two channels, and just to stand vindicated as that pedal show, all pedals sound best with everything at 2 o'clock.
Yes.
I have a question. I want to hear the treble booster into that.
Okay.
Right.
Actually, I might just dial back the mic channel a bit to completely go across what I just said.
Okay. Just play again so we can.
Cleans up.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
We're relatively volumized here. I don't know what we're hitting on the thing there, but feel-wise, I am enjoying it.
It's fun to play.
We are going to get quieter in a minute. One of the reasons for revisiting some of these is we are actually aware that people don't get to play at 110 dB all the time.
The injustice.
And exactly. It does make us sad, but you know.
And just sort of being dragged, kicking and screaming into the reality of that, not least with a little advancing age from me and Dan. I think we both recently, just to tangent slightly, we've both recently had an issue or two in the ear hole.
At 3:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But sorry, my point is that I want to play the guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to play the guitar.
I get that.
It feels kind of easy. I don't know if I'm...
No, it feels easy. It feels fun to play.
Yeah.
There's a thing that when you're in a room with a valve amp and it's cranked up, it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
It's a bear that you need to wrestle to the ground.
Yeah.
And when you hear guitar players who've been playing that their whole life, and they've, like Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah.
When you hear him do his thing, and he knows he's tamed the bear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He knows how to
because
take that aggressive sound and work with it.
if you have like a really, really loud amp, like, if you really crank like a Plexi Marshall,
Yep.
Anything you do is gonna, even just moving your fingers across the strings is going to come out so ridiculously
Absolutely.
loud.
Yes.
So it really requires you to play in a different way, because you're not going to hear those things if you play it.
But the sound pressure level alone, playing that, I mean, so when we have experience days here, and it's fair to say most guys we have in here have never played a loud amp.
Mm-hmm.
And when they put a guitar on and they can feel this thing that's alive in their hands and at any minute it's going to take off, it's a wildly different beast. But separating that from the actual sound of the amplifier, the experience of playing at that volume to the sound of the amplifier is a thing. I mean, and that's when we heard the Lion, it was like, ooh, that actually sounds really good.
But I think there's another part to this, which is something that I think sometimes I don't know if I should say misunderstood, but at least, where people sort of get things mixed up a little bit. And that is, even if you're playing an enormously loud amp, there's a very big difference between standing in the room with that amp and miking it up and standing in the control room. Even if you imagine that the sound, the engineer had cranked the monitors up to the same level, there's a very different sound between miking something up and hearing it live in the room. So if you're comparing a modeler or a digital amp to a real amp,
it's apples and oranges.
It's actually apples and oranges, where this is more real in the sense that, we're actually playing through real speakers. So you get more of that feel.
So we're able to turn, what we've done here, we've turned the cab simulation off.
Yes.
Right? So it's the preamp simulation going straight into a valve power amp, going straight into a pair of guitar speakers.
Yes, it's actually preamp and power amp.
Preamp and power amp.
So it's the full amp.
Right.
So in that case, we're really just using, the Mesa as a way to make things louder.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that because we don't have the speaker simulation turned on, the room
doesn't work.
Isn't doing anything.
And you can actually see that if I turn let's turn the room knob on this one, you notice that it's blinking a little bit, which is just its way of saying that I don't do anything. You might as well not bother.
I have the same reaction.
And you've added a boost.
Yes. So the idea with that being that there is a couple of, a lot of times when we think of amps, we think of, famous guitar tones. So we think of our favorite album or our favorite guitar player. And a lot of times that's just, amazing guitar player plugged into amp, and that's the sound. But sometimes it's a combination of a pedal or a boost or something, overdrive. Pushing it. So for all of these, we basically added, all of these amps, we've added a boost section in front of it. And depending on what amp or channel or whatever you use, that boost might actually change. So right now we're on Woodrow, and the toggle switch here on the right selects, for this pedal, selects the boost. So on the top one, we have a Korg SDD 3000 preamp.
Oh, no way.
Which is famously used by The Edge from, so obviously also a famous Tweet user. So we wanted to get that sound in there. If you just want to push the amp a little bit, you set it to the stock middle position. That's just clean boost. And then in the lower position, we have an EP3 Echoplex.
Oh, nice.
And if you turn it all the way down, the boost control, it's just off. It's essentially the same as pushing a foot switch on a pedal.
Daniel?
Okay. I love that. I'm going a bit more of that. I love the small box spring reverb.
Yes.
Do you remember we came over to TC and I bought my I had my little tiny thing.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting because of all the amazing things that we could do, we couldn't get that sound.
That tiny little
that was
sound,
amazing. There it is. That's really cool. All right, sorry, Michael.
It's quite right. So I'm gonna just give it a little bit less in the front end of the pedal itself, and then we'll see. Maybe we'll redress that in a sec.
Okay.
I was just trying to do my Neil Young impression.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that's really that sort of tweed amp just almost caving in.
Yeah.
Totally caved in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool, man, because it does that. It does the caving in thing.
Yeah. And you don't break your real expensive tweed amp speakers doing that thing, which is...
I just want to try one thing, Mick.
Right.
Can you play... So it's quite loud. Mm-hmm. And it feels really good, right?
Yeah.
It feels nice. And it's, as I said, it's something about it. It feels easy to play. It feels fun.
Yeah.
Right? You play. I'm going to start turning it down.
Okay, we might need to just adjust the mic pre's a bit because it will get inaudible.
But that's part of the question.
All right.
Just go with me on this one.
All right.
This is a lot of trust in this man.
What should I play?
Just what should you play?
Yeah.
All right. As you were, sir. And wedding band volume. We can't talk to each other.
That's the only wedding band song I know. Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to play at that volume, I want headphones on.
Yeah.
And I want it loud in my ears.
Yeah. Okay.
Because then at least I can feel it in my ears.
Yeah. Because fundamentally, that's the same sound.
Yeah.
So we haven't, by reducing what we're giving to the amp, because the amp is so open and the speakers have got Like we're not pushing the power, we're not pushing the speakers at all.
Yeah.
So we've just made it quieter. But it's without changing fundamentally the sound, which a real amp doesn't do.
No, unless you have like a master volume amp, of course, and it
But even
still
then,
changes
still changes the sound.
This is literally like having a fader on a console.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, for me, that's the strength. You know, one of the strengths of it. You know, at volume, it sounds great. It feels great. But then it's like same sound, just quieter.
Yeah.
Very cool, man.
If you're relatively new to this world, that's what you expect a guitar amp to do, but it just doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Does it? For loads of reasons.
So one other thing we're going to do, because I see loads of guitar players with two on their boards.
Yeah.
So just to say, these are stereo.
Yes.
Right, stereo in and out.
Yep.
So if you want to just have one, you can still use the stereo effects.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
And put them in front or after, depending on what you like.
Yeah.
And how much gain you use on the virtual amp.
But you can't have like one pedal it's like the Woodrow is the tweed one.
It's
right?
just the tweed.
It's just the tweed one.
Yeah.
All the power and energy is there to make that tweed sound.
Yeah.
If you want to have the tweed and the Marshall together,
Yeah.
and what I see, apart from there is the idea that, okay, I'm going to turn the Marshall on and I'll turn that off and turn this tweed on, and that's great. But I see guys running them in parallel.
Yeah.
And that's something that you do as well, right?
Yeah, to me it's a luxury because I mean I've seen you guys do it as well. There is a certain sound that you get when you can match two amps that kind of does one amp does something really well, but doesn't do the other thing. So if you're like if you like sort of that mid-rangey thing from say an AC30 with more of that scooped blackface Fendery kind of thing, or if you're if you like a Marshall and an AC30 together, whatever it is, that's typically a pretty big rig to carry around.
Yeah.
You can just bring two tiny pedals and you can actually get that same sort of feeling and same sort of tone at way more practically and cheaper as well, to be honest.
Yeah, because there's different levels of it, aren't there? Level 1, carting your Marshall and a Fender physical amp.
Yeah.
Level 3 or level 1, depending on which way you want to look at it, only the pedal boards direct.
Yeah.
But in between that is actually flavors of amps into a smaller thing that you could carry around. So it's not full stacks or direct. There is a mixture of that world, which is kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could even, if you want to, you could bring, if you want to dabble in more elaborate setups like a wet, dry, wet, you could bring one amp.
And have that as the dry and then have the stereo out as the...
Exactly,
That's very clever. So, Mick, I want you to play the Lion, right, just as it is, into both, and then we're going to split the Lion and the Woodrow left and right.
Oh, nice.
All right?
Cool.
So, here is the Lion.
That sounds killer.
Yeah.
Really lovely.
So would the delay be stereo now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we're going parallel into this, because the Galaxy is stereo in, stereo out. So because that's after the parallel split, it's like Woodrow one side, Lion the other, stereo delay edge, reverb edge.
Yeah.
Was the delay on then?
Yeah.
Was it just a slapback?
Yeah.
Make
Well, it's a bit.
Make it a bit longer.
Okay.
There's a lot of string definition and clarity, and it feels. I tell you what it feels like to me is sometimes when the amps are really cranked like that, you get a load of bloat, and you get a load of kind of like, which you might have to take out in post. It sounds like that is already done, and it sounds balanced and together.
Yeah.
And not bloating. I've got bass where I want it. I got string definition where I want it.
Yeah.
And hearing them at this volume
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it ties in with the experience we had with Jack, where it was a bit louder, and it's like, it does change it changes the game a little bit, because re what you were both talking about earlier, there's two conversations. One is tone and one is volume.
Yeah.
And the two things are completely inextricable.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Because you play different. It's a different experience when that relationship, especially at sound pressure level, that relationship between this becomes a different animal at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, I get it. It's great. So I think what was interesting.
So we had the lie on one side, the Woodrow the other, and stereo delay.
Stereo delay and tube driver going into the front of both.
Oh, okay.
What happens with impedance? So when you depending on all these amplifiers have got similar but different impedances, and everything changes with the pots and all this sort of stuff. I'm assuming that's all happening in here as well.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of it, right?
Yeah, and obviously if we bypass the cabinets, we still impose an impedance, because otherwise, it wouldn't sound right. So
I'm so pleased to hear that, because you've got to do that to get it right.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That is very, very cool. Okay.
Ruby then.
Ruby. Where did we go wrong? Teach us, shape us, mold us.
Well, you should just try it out. I think the biggest part is just hearing it in the room cranked up, and having that experience.
Okay, so what amps are in here? So this is the Vox one.
Yeah, so this is the Vox one. So they're a little different, all of them. So if we just go through them quickly.
Yep.
So we tried the Tweed Deluxe, and that is literally a Tweed Deluxe with a couple of boosts in front of it.
Okay.
Lion is a Plexi Marshall, but it's a little different in the sense that it doesn't have different boosts, but it has 3 different versions of Plexi Marshall. So it has a super bass, for the Hendrixy, Doyle Bramall folks. It has a super lead for, your Jimmy Pages, your, Angus Youngs, all that stuff. And then it has a brown mode, which is essentially a Variact Plexi Marshall for the Eddie brown sounds.
That's really cool.
And the boost that we have, which basically is the same for all 3 of them, is a combination of things that as you turn it up, we add more and more. So it's essentially an EP3, an Echoplex, where we then, as you turn that up, we also start adding an emulation of an old Boss GE10, so graphic equalizer, which Eddie also famously used. So basically cranking that up And
just to add that in as well.
You start adding that up. So it's basically a way, once you start cranking that all the way up, then you basically, the idea is that you get the brown sound. But you can add it to any of the 3 channels.
Okay. I think we had this discussion with Jack, is that when you come to a modded Plexi Marshall type pedal, that's the expectation, isn't it? That it's going to do that sound. Dan, I'm going to plug you in some humbuckers in a minute, and I want to hear it, because you can do that. Can I hear the super bass?
Yes, and funnily, that's what I use most of the time. Not that I don't mind the the whole shreddy thing. I'd like to do that as well. But the super bass, for having it in front for for overdrives and fuzzes, is a lot of fun.
Okay,
I want to hear the super bass. Can I have me slap back?
You can.
Please?
You can.
All that bottom end is just completely addictive, isn't it?
It's so you know it's not good for you or anybody, but it's very nice.
I tweaked it back a bit, but there's I don't know, that E flat, a room reverb or a slapback, and a bit of that super bass type Marshall. It's just
that's the tone.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing on online as we do on Woodrow, which is basically you have the 2 channels. So if you turn only one of them up, it's the same as plugging into channel 1 or channel 2. In the app, if you turn both of them up, we Y-cable. In the app that goes along with the pedal, you can actually choose whether you want to Y-cable or jumper the channels.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
And you can also choose whether you want to plug into the high or the low input if you really want to nerd out on,
So
very cool.
Which is which? Which is the high treble one?
So this is the high treble one.
Yeah. Good. Up for a bit of high gain, Dan?
Get your shred on.
I am.
I am. Are you up for playing this guitar?
I'll have a go.
There comes the copyright.
Oh yeah.
There comes the copyright strike. That's it, man.
Yeah, very cool.
Sorry, I did rather put Dan on the spot there, giving him a guitar he's probably never played before.
Never.
Looks good on you.
It does?
Yeah.
It does. The blue brings out the colour of my shred.
You don't like blue guitars, do you?
Red is where it's at for me.
Yeah, sunburst. Dan also doesn't like sunburst.
Oh really?
No, I can't do it. I just want to hear my SG
Okay.
with that. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I twiddled all the knobbages.
It's all right.
Let's twiddle the back. I think that's the most together high gain tone we've
had in here.
Yeah. Because when we try high, obviously Dan and I aren't higher gain people really. Quite often when we crank the Marshall up, it just gets, again, I'm going to say bloated and lots of stuff you don't want in there. Yeah. And it feels like that is, polite would almost sound like a pejorative term, and I don't mean it pejoratively, I mean it.
But together.
Together, yeah. And kind of almost like it's post-EQ'd already.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I mean it's not like we have a ton of like there isn't like an outboard signal chain or a channel strip afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But obviously with UA we have a long history of recording, and one of the mantras we always have is that we want it to sound like a record or like an album.
Okay.
It's like that Nashville quote as well. It sounds like an album, and that's definitely one of the things that we really focus on. And I would even say that without the cabinets, you're missing that last piece, because it's actually a really big part of that sort of finished tone.
Sure.
Yeah.
But as guitar players who are used to hearing things through a live real guitar cabinet, that gives you, removing that and having no microphone or anything, it gives you more of that live in a room feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
But it is, we do try to make it, make it easy for people to get good live tones, because I think as a guitar players, a lot of times what we really care about is, I have my guitar and I have my nice pedals and I have my cool amp, but the whole thing about mic placement and room treatment and all that stuff is sort of like, I'll leave that to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So it's really nice to have something where you don't have to worry about that stuff. We helped you get that sound.
Especially when the goal for a great number of live performers is, if you're going through a cover set, for example, to cop the tones as close as possible, and to give whether you're doing your own front of house or whether there actually is an engineer. I think on a lot of function gigs there won't be an engineer. You'll be doing your own mix and all of that, and you don't have to worry about any of that, because it does kind of sound like the record. And the experience for the punters is it sounds more like the record. And there's a whole debate around that, whether that's what you're actually going for or whether you want the visceral nature of a live performance, and it's a different thing.
Which is why you can bypass the caps altogether. So if you want that more live-like sound, you can do that as well. The fun thing about the caps is that it gives you more flavors, because as you guys know, there's a very even if you take like the Tweed, there's a very big difference between running it through an old Jensen, just in the box. Or replacing it with like a Celestian Blue, which is also something or Celestian Gold, or something entirely different. And with all these amps, we sort of try to give users some different variations of the tone, but something that makes sense. So it's not like, I want to play my Plexi Marshall through a 1/8. It's things that make sense within the realm of that amplifier.
One of the things I think is important is, obviously for you guys from a sales and a marketing perspective, and also for customers to understand, giving the thing a name, like saying this is this speaker and that speaker, I think we can get attached to that, and we can be completely latched onto the fact that maybe it doesn't sound exactly like your favorite Alnico Blue or whatever. What I would encourage us all to do is to, once you've made the decision and you bought something, is almost put that down and go, actually, just choose the one you like.
Yeah,
right.
Because we can get so het up on all this, and goodness knows Dan and I have got het up on this a lot, going, it doesn't sound exactly like this thing. It's like, you know what? Just choose the one
that's working for you at that moment.
And try not to worry too much about it.
And the other part of that is that you might have an idea of, because your favorite guitar player is using a certain speaker, that's the one you buy, and then you put it in there. But how many of us have, even for you guys who have a ton of different amps here, how many times do you really take out cabinets and go like, I'm just going to put in 10 different speakers and evaluate which one you like the most? It's not something you do very often.
If I said that was me, does that make me very sad?
No, very cool.
As a live example, and a terrible name drop for Robin Ford, who we had in here a couple of weeks ago, he famously uses those Celestian D1265s in his Dumble cab. We're all sat here going, oh my God, that's the best speaker I've ever heard.
What is it? Look in the back. It's like, really?
It's that. Get one, put it in our own amps. It's like, it's
not going to be.
It's not the same thing for so many reasons. Anyway, so I've laboured that point too much. Dan, Ruby.
Yes. Just last question before we get into the Ruby. If I had 2 of these, right? Mm-hmm. Because I always use 2 amplifiers, doing wet, dry, wet. So I can see how that can happen. But if I just bypass these...
Do you mean wet, dry? Sorry, just to...
Oh, sorry, wet, dry. Yes, very good. Yep. Because I always use 2 amplifiers. But if I just bypass these, what's the bypass in them? Is it a buffered bypass? Is it true bypass?
It's a buffered bypass.
It's a buffered bypass. Yeah. Okay. Because it's like I can see having these right at the end of the signal chain.
Yeah.
I've got my amps today.
Yeah.
Just going to bypass them, turn them off. I'm at home practicing. I'm going to plug my headphone, whatever.
Yeah.
We're doing a function set for a...
Well, Jack does that.
Yeah.
Jack Griffiths does that. Jake, who's filming today, does that. He has a dream underneath the board for that exact purpose.
Yeah, I do the same thing, but I have a couple of different boards. And the smallest board I have, if I take an amp out, it's a golden on there.
Okay.
If I don't want to carry my amp, or I can carry my amp, I take the golden out, I put a dream in because I have reverb in the dream, and now that's my amp instead. Yeah. Then slightly bigger rig, where I have a G3, and I have a Woodrow and a dream.
Okay.
In parallel.
Okay, so like we were doing before in parallel.
Yeah. But I can actually also split them up, so I only run, if I want to get more of a raunchy sound for something, I can just use one or the other. So it's,
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you who wanted to hear Tore play the guitar today, it's not going to happen because he does have a broken finger and a healed wrist that doesn't quite bend around the guitar. Yeah.
But even, so, sorry to interrupt, one of the things that I go through a lot with techs is talking about redundant systems.
Yeah.
Because, things happen. But having something like this there, you can just go, amp's dead, bang. Yeah. And you're back on and firing in seconds.
I never leave the house without one. I have one of the amps I use a lot is an old Gibson Vanguard, a really old one.
Yeah.
And it's awesome, but it has a tendency to die every 10 gigs. It just sort of. So I'll never leave my house without one of these pedals. Just to, because chances are there's somebody with like a PV Bandit or something, and you can use this. I'd much rather.
I genuinely have a pocket pod, a Line 6 pocket pod in the glove compartment of my car, just so that I never have to use it.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing about this is that I get that you can get amp tones from multi-effects.
Yeah,
and that's cool as well, and there's definitely a lot of purpose in that. But for the people who like pedals, there's actually a certain convenience in just having something that does the one thing you're used to and not having to. It's like, this giant thing that does a million things. No, I just want my amp just more convenient.
Well, okay, before we hear the Ruby then, let's have those two conversations now. One of the things that will annoy the crap out of you guys who do all that work in R&D, getting the sound right and all of that, I'm of the opinion that at this point in time, it's about UI.
Yeah.
Because the tech is there, right?
Yeah.
You know this. You are at the leading edge of the tech. And whether you're boss trying to get a million things into a box this big with 1,000 menus and other companies, or whether you guys trying to simplify it out, put a reduced feature set, or at least a perceived reduced feature set in a UI that people that understand, I am convinced that people buy on UI as much as they do tone.
I totally agree. Yeah, UI and looks, to be honest.
Yeah. Don't tell anyone.
Did I say that?
And to move on from what you're saying, I think you guys are to be commended from my perspective anyway, putting knobs on the top, switches, minimal amount of secondary functions. Now, of course, there is the app that you can get into if you want to, which precedes the next question, which we're going to ask on behalf of lots of people. Why no MIDI?
So the whole platform that we started this thing was really meant to be simple. And I personally, and basically personally, and then on the behalf of every guitar player out there who might be interested in these pedals, didn't want to have something that was excessively complicated and tricky to use. And I felt like if we really wanted MIDI in there, we would have to throw in way more presets. All these pedals have basically one preset. So there's, all that we listen to here is one, which the left side is live mode. So it's basically whatever the pedals are set to, that's what you hear. You can switch to the other side, and that's a preset that you can store. So it's that's the way they work.
Yep.
Should mention you can also reconfigure those, so you can have it be the boost or the vibrato or whatever, or the reverb. But at the end of the day, one preset, and the same thing goes for the reverb and the delays.
Yep.
And my concern was that if we added MIDI, then we would also have to give people, literally hundreds of presets. That's sort of what you expect. And then you suddenly, because I didn't want like a ton of displays and stuff on these pedals, then you'd sort of lose track of where you were. Because, am I on preset 3? Or is my preset 3 the one with the,
is that display?
Yeah. And that sort of changes things. With that said, I 100% fully recognize the benefits and the niceness of MIDI. Truth be told, I've, after I put everything in my G3, there's been a few times where I went like, oh man, it would be kind of nice to have MIDI.
I think for me, where I first, like the amp sims, I totally get it. It was, because I think the Galaxy sounds amazing, and actually the plugin, the UA Space Echo is something that I use. And I think it sounds great. And it's like, if I had access to 4 presets on it, it wouldn't be off the board, because it's, it sounds great. It's also the amp sims, great, but with the delays and reverbs, because there's so much in them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yeah. And they are sonically as good as it gets.
Yeah. Have you done any market research? Do you do market research?
We do market research, and it's it's interesting because when you ask people if they want something, generally people say yes.
Yeah.
The tricky thing is that if you keep asking them, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want a bunch of things? They'll typically say yes to all of them.
Yeah, of course.
And then if you actually make that product, they'll go, that's way too complicated.
Yes,
so there is always this balancing act where you kind of you have to make some tough choices on behalf of the user to actually make the product that they find is fun and easy to use.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might go too hard in one direction and go like, we're never putting that in. And then afterwards, maybe we should have done that.
Yeah.
And that's always it's always a toss-up because you're never going to make everybody happy. There's always going to be somebody. So the balance is figuring that out.
Yeah.
Straw poll then. How many, so Dan and I talk about this a lot. Straw poll, how many percentage of guitar players, and when I say guitar players, I mean, what do I mean? I don't want to be disparaging to anyone. So a guitar player is somebody who plays guitar, i.e. not somebody, guitar owners are not the same as guitar players, right? Okay. So if you play at home in your bedroom or your sitting room or whatever, you don't play in bands, whatever, you are a guitar player. If you have a guitar in the cupboard that you haven't taken out for 2 years, you might be a guitar player, but I'm not going to include you in this. What percentage of guitar players use MIDI?
I imagine it's quite small.
Go on, straw poll, what do you think?
Do you know this?
No, I don't. I'm saying it's a straw poll. So if you do, in the comments, say if you do or if you don't. You make products where a high percentage of the user base uses MIDI.
Yeah.
What do you reckon out there in guitar land? What's your feel?
Okay. Let's include people that buy pedals in that, right? Not just.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Okay, so if you own one pedal.
If you own one pedal.
Or more.
Yeah. So I would say, if you own one pedal or more, I would say it's probably no more than 10%.
I would guess it's more in the range of 1%, but growing.
Yeah.
So fun story.
I was going to say less than 1%.
Okay.
But growing, yeah.
One thing I did, apart from
Let us
us
know.
doing...
We might all be wrong, but
I'm completely deluded.
Well, I don't know.
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't, not necessarily.
No, I'm pretty sure I am.
But I did, one of the things I did when we were designing these pedals was that I went to that gear page.
Yeah.
And there is the most popular thread on gear page, if you sort by popularity, are always the post your pedal board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're so popular, so I think they're up to like, thread number 40. Because they max them out and then they just do another one. And I just went through all of them and I was sort of ticking off how many of these pedal boards that people actually post have 1 MIDI, 2 expression pedals on there. And it was scarily few.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But with that said, the people who are into it really like it, really need it.
Yeah.
The people who are not into it don't really care.
Yeah.
Would be interesting to draw a Venn diagram by age, music preference, and MIDI users.
Yeah.
Because I think you're both right in that it is definitely growing. And to the final point, I think when you come, if you're looking for a fully featured pedal and you go onto Taming or Anderton's or wherever it is you're going to buy your pedal and you start comparing features, even if you don't use it, it might be, I might use it one day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Because people do buy on features and benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not me.
How old is MIDI now? Is it 50 years old?
40, 50?
At least as old as God's dog.
I think it's amazing that a technology like MIDI that's 50 years old is growing in popularity. I
seem to remember going to Frankfurt trade show, and every year there'd be like the MIDI, like all the MIDI people would meet up and talk about new standards. And
And I part of that is because inherent in any technology like that, there's a sense of we want to keep it for ourselves. And it's not delivered in a UI that makes sense. Back to our UI conversation, what's happening with the latest generation of pedals, it does make sense.
Yeah.
And that UI offers features and benefits that aren't considered this kind of exclusive. You need to be doing programming. You need to be doing complex stuff on computers in order to make it work. I mean, if any of you that were in the early days of home recording and early DAWs, even just trying to get sound in and out was like maddening, wasn't it? Yeah. So
the Ataris that used to run that. Do you remember that? I remember like the really early days of
No take that.
Yeah. Anyway,
remember that tennis game with 2 things that went up and down? Okay. We're gonna have another listen to the Ruby. We're going to do the direct things in a separate show. We've had a chat and we decided we're going to do it in a separate show because we don't want to rush it. And there's some other stuff that we can talk about in the context of that. And I think it is high time Dan and I revisited that. So the issue we had with the Ruby, I think, when we had it on the show, was we were hitting it into the front of an amp.
Yeah.
And I had assumed that if you were turning the cab sims off, you were also turning the back end of the amp off. Which is not the case.
No.
So now we are hearing it.
So you're running tone stack into tone stack, really.
Okay.
And that's what. Anyway, let's see where we are.
Okay. All right. I wonder if I should get red again.
Yeah.
Let me. That's good.
I can't believe you still worry about this guitar after all these years.
Yeah, like I've really worried about
it.
Yeah, so I actually think I started out by going through these and I never came around to Ruby. So as I said before, on Lion we have the 3 different plexis.
Yeah.
On Ruby we have 2 different amps.
Okay.
So there is a 63 AC30 non-top boost.
Okay.
And a 65
with top boost.
Top boost. All right, sorry, I'm 61 non-top boost, 63 top boost.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that and Dream mixed up. But, a non-top boost version and a top boost version. And the top boost version also has the vibrato setting.
Right.
So basically you can switch between a brilliant channel on the top boost normal channel on the non-top boost, and then the vibrato channel on the top boost.
And in order to change the vibrato,
yes,
you go into the alt thing.
Yeah.
And again, we're not hearing the room setting because we don't have the speaker simulation turned on. We'll do that another day.
And last thing, just like on a real AC30, the knobs are inverted.
Okay.
They're cuts, so you turn.
How much support time do you spend with that?
Surprisingly little.
Oh, that's
but
good.
I think
That's
luckily you turn it and you go. But the other thing to remember is that on the non-top boost AC30s,
there's no bass.
There's no bass and treble.
Right,
There's only
tone.
a cut or a tone control. Yeah. Whereas on the top boosts, there's the cut and the bass and treble are there. So the bass and treble don't work on the normal channel.
Oh wow! Okay,
and you know that because it will flash red when you turn it.
Okay,
exactly.
So can we start on the normal channel then?
Yes.
All right. So I don't have any delay or reverb or anything on. This is just the Ruby into the power amp.
Tremendous amount of bottom end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely oobs of bottom end.
Yeah, and certainly in that model. But
Give me some clean noise, Dan.
okay. Let's try the tube drive on that for a sec.
The bass is totally addictive.
Yeah.
You can really feel that sort of,
Huge bottom end, yeah, and because we're nice and loud, but maintains that almost buffer-like, very high end,
chimey.
That's what we always say about Voxes, isn't it?
I know. But it's true, right? Especially using the Brilliant channel, you just get that something only a Vox can do, really.
The clean sound.
Very cool.
Do we stand corrected, Dan?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it does help to know how things work. But
RTFM.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I think the Ruby sounds great. And the Woodrow. The Lion for me is the one that I'm very drawn to.
Woodrow for me.
Yeah.
Big fan. And I think that assertion that we touched on a little bit earlier, that there's definitely an element of produced guitar tone in there.
Yeah.
Sound like finished guitar tones.
Yeah.
And it's a treat to hear them at Patent Pending.
As opposed to Finnish guitar tones, the metal. Yes. Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's really cool. I'm really glad we've done this. I love the idea of just having one. Even, I'll never not use amps while I can lift them.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, what a valuable thing to have. Yeah, and this is that pedal show, so we were kind of loud today. We said we were going to go quiet, but I think we both lose the will to live a little bit when it gets quiet. And Tore's here, and it's fun, and it's
fun,
like we haven't seen Tore for so long, and it's been brilliant.
But quiet, you can do quiet in the room and still loud in your ears. That much I can cope with. Yeah. Cool, man. Thank you, Tore, for coming in.
Really appreciate it, buddy.
For letting me come back here. It's always a treat.
We tried to mine him information on new product, and he sort of told us, but we can't really. We can't really go there. But what we didn't ask is life good, mate?
Life is excellent. Apart from all the broken stuff, then
because you're running marathons.
You're running
like
marathons.
Yeah, I dabble a little bit in running when
Is it safe?
Apparently not. Apparently not. Yeah, broke my wrist running, broke my finger traveling to Berlin to run a half marathon. So, running is not safe.
No.
When you're not
Jiu-jitsu
running.
is much safer.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool, man.
Brilliant.
Always good to catch up.
Pleasure.
Yeah, always welcome.
Thank
buddy.
you for a bit of re-education.
Don't be a stranger. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon.
Thank you.
And massive thanks to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grab some merch.
Indeed.
And links below if you want to, check out any more of the stuff in the description. Check out the links. Happy days.
Nice. Many more interesting questions to come, I think.
Indeed.
Not least, when will UA start doing MIDI?
Yeah, indeed.
The MIDI stuff.
M1D1.
M1D1.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.